following is a special presentation of Way 31 News. State of emergency. 1 year of COVID-19 in Alabama.
An unprecedented year.
No one really saw up front the twists and turns that the pandemic was going to take.
The COVID-19 virus unleashed economic disruption and massive human suffering statewide.
You know, it's kind of an empty spot,
More than 10,000 deaths, more than 500,000 cases. COVID-19 changing lives and forcing a new normal.
Roll with the punches and do the best job that I can do.
In the midst of the chaos, a ray of hope.
Well, there's light at the end of the tunnel. We've got the vaccine now, so just everybody needs to get it as soon as you can.
Way 31 dives deep into the pandemic's impact, the changes and sacrifices we all made, and what's next with vaccinations underway. Good evening, I'm Dan Schaefer.
I'm Dasha Sherman.
I'm Pat Simon.
And I'm Marie Waxel. We're all here, socially distanced, as we bring you this special report, State of Emergency, 1 year of COVID-19 in Alabama.
Tonight, you'll hear our exclusive one-on-one interviews with the decision makers who worked tirelessly to stop the virus spread and are now overseeing vaccination efforts.
Plus, we'll look into the lives forever changed by the pandemic.
Way 31's Brecken Terry shows us the human toll this virus has taken.
That's Florence artist and grandma Jan Roblin giving one of her grandkids a big hug, something her son Benji and his family won't be able to do again.
I said, Mom, I'm proud of you. I love you. You have fought this virus. You're so strong, but just relax and just know that I love you more than anything, and you're the best mom. And I'll see you soon. And she died an hour and a half later.
And here's Johnson Trousdale, a grandpa and father who was the first person to die of coronavirus in Lauderdale County.
It's kind of an empty spot, you're used to every night right before supper, right after supper, making that phone call, and he's not there to make that phone call too.
The virus took some of our frontline workers here in the Shoals too. Nurses, a bus driver, and a police officer.
Somebody said something about replacing him, and I said, we can't replace him. We can get somebody to take his place, but there's no replacing a guy like Walter. You can't replace that.
St. Florine police officer Walter Johnson is still irreplaceable, and there's a hole in the town who still misses him. That same pain is felt at Colbert County schools with the loss of bus driver Bobby Stutz. And at the hospitals, even those caring for the sick couldn't escape the virus's grip.
A friend to so many hundreds of people here, both on the staff side as well as the patients she's taken care of, some of which multiple times through the years, naturally, and just beloved across the board.
That's Helen Keller Hospital President Kyle Buchanan talking about Jennifer McClung, a nurse and mom they lost. And here is Rebecca Haddock, a mother of 2 young boys, a wife, and nurse at the North Alabama Medical Center in Florence. Both nurses lost their battles within a month of each other.
Very much a hands-on mama and so involved in her little boys' lives. And I hope everybody knows that and sees that we're all vulnerable to this disease. We're on the front lines, and we are called heroes, and we don't look at ourselves as heroes. We are very much not heroes. If we were heroes, we wouldn't be sick.
Each person is so much more than a number on a dashboard. There's someone we know, someone we love, and we're someone's world. A world rocked by a virus that takes at will. In the Shoals, Brecken Terry, Way 31 News.
Alabama hit a morbid milestone in COVID-19 deaths March 3rd, and that's when the state topped 10,000 deaths. That's one of America's highest per capita death rates. Despite that, hundreds of thousands of Alabamians survived their brush with COVID. I sat down with one man who shared his experience with the virus.
At 57 years old, Anthony Tyler devotes his days to regaining fundamental functions of his body.
I lost the use of my arms, lost the use of my legs. I couldn't stand.
Tyler tested positive for the coronavirus in August of 2020. His wife called 911 one night concerned about his worsening symptoms.
I woke up in another room 4 weeks later. I spent 4 weeks on a ventilator. There was times that they didn't think I would make it. I understand what he said in Psalms 23 where he said, "Yea, I'll walk through the valley of the shadow of death." I understand that scripture now a lot better than I ever have.
Tyler awoke to the painful realization that the virus had robbed him of his ability to walk, eat on his own, or move his hands and arms. After weeks in the hospital, Tyler moved to Encompass Health to regain his strength. Occupational therapist Jenny Sisko was part of the team tasked with his rehabilitation.
Very early on, just getting from laying in the bed to sitting at the side of the bed was excruciating. It was difficult and very painful and very anxiety driven because he was relying on us, me and another therapist, to get him to that position because he had no way to do it himself.
Terrified. Terrified. Will I ever walk? Am I going to be like this the rest of my life? You go through your mind, am I going to be a burden to my family? Am I going to be a burden to my wife? You go, all these things play over in your head. But at the same time, when you think about them, gives you a reason to fight and get up.
After 11 weeks of intense therapy, a major breakthrough. In December, Anthony Tyler walked out of Encompass Health Rehabilitation Hospital. The halls lined with cheering staff and patients who shared in his journey.
It was emotional. It was a good time.
Yeah.
Something we'd been waiting on for a while.
The hallways were lined. Everybody knew this man. We were so excited that he got to go home.
Tyler told me that to this day he is not 100%.
I still don't have the use in my arms and hands like I'm going to.
He continues his physical therapy at home and remains optimistic about his future.
I am going to recover. I am going to be able to do the things with my family that I've always done.
Tyler told me he has a grandson that's 2 years old. He looks forward to the day he can move his arms and hands freely again and hold him.
Over the past year, we've all dealt with a lot of changes. Today marks 238 days since Governor Ivey mandated people wear masks in public. We've also seen schools make tough decisions to keep students safe as well as educated. Way 31's Megan Reyna talked with educators about those challenges and what's ahead.
For 15 years, Alexander Murcia, or Mr. Murcia, has been taking a ride through the world of education. But it goes without saying he's experienced a few road bumps here and there. Then comes 2020.
This year has offered a lot of challenges, but that's kind of the fun of it, is finding the solutions to the challenges.
The pandemic shutting down schools across the U.S. Quickly, school leaders had to figure out a way to serve their students, mainly relying on technology. Murcia, a high school teacher at New Century in Huntsville, kept a positive outlook through it all. In fact, he was a student himself during this time.
I actually got to experience the transition from traditional classroom to virtual, not only as a teacher, but as a student as well in graduate school.
But his main concern was that each of his students were receiving equitable education. To this day, he is still teaching both virtually and in person.
This pandemic for me is just a way to kind of, roll with the punches and do the best job that I can do.
Across the county in Gurley, you'll find Marky Clement with a classroom filled with students. This is the Madison County High School teacher's 6th year in education.
The hardest was when we left March 13th, and we kind of just said, okay, we're not sure how we're going to create a plan.
Clement knew her students were capable of learning virtually, and she was comfortable working with the technology, but it wasn't their grades she was concerned with.
It's more, are you okay at home? Are you eating lunch every day? Are you able to talk about how you're feeling?
When the district allowed it, Clement began teaching both in person and virtually. But even then, that presented its own set of challenges.
Every kid deserves 100%. I don't think anyone's arguing that, but how do you give 100% if you're working in class and filming and grading digitally and grading in person? It's a major task. And so that was the most overwhelming, and the point where I went, okay, eventually this has to end.
But teaching in person came with risk, and Clement knew that. At one point this semester, she contracted COVID-19.
Which was terrible. I had it for a week and it took me out. But at the same time, I feel like it's important that kids are in school.
Despite all the challenges thrown at these educators, neither Marcia or Clement plan to leave education anytime soon.
Honestly, I just love teaching. I love making a difference in these kids' lives.
I would never want this pandemic to happen again, but just the amount of recognition that teachers have received, I'm thankful for, and I'm proud that people realize how much of our time is put into investing in kids and to kind of propelling society forward.
Reporting in Madison County, Megan Reyna, Way 31 News.
Next, we'll look at how Alabama arrived at this point in the pandemic. And you'll hear how Governor Ivey grades herself on guiding the state through these unprecedented times.
State of emergency. 1 year of COVID-19 in Alabama.
For many of us, the past year feels like a blur. Before we ever had a positive case in Alabama, Governor Kay Ivey created a state COVID-19 task force on March 6th. 1 week later, the state confirmed its first case in Montgomery County.
We have taken preliminary measures and made preparations in the case that this virus would eventually reach our state.
The pandemic became deadly nearly 2 weeks later. A Jackson County resident died from the virus on March 25th. The next day, Governor Kay Ivey announced that all public schools would close for the rest of the year. At that point, the state had recorded 36 cases. On April 4th, the state's stay-at-home order went into effect, shutting down non-essential businesses. The stay-at-home order lifted on April 30th, becoming a safer-at-home order. Schools and restaurants remained closed. The governor extended that order several more times, loosening restrictions every few months. On May 11th, restaurants and gyms reopened at limited capacity. On May 22nd, schools, childcare facilities, and entertainment venues did the same. At that point, the summer surge began. By early June, the state was consistently adding more than 1,000 new cases daily. On July 15th, the governor announced a statewide mask order requiring most people to wear a face covering at all times in public.
I continue to believe that personal responsibility is everyone's responsibility.
The safer-at-home order, which included the mask mandate, was extended again several times. Originally set to expire on July 31st, it was extended to August 31st, then October 2nd, and again to November 8th. Hospitalizations peaked at an all-time high of 1,613 on August 6th. In November, the safer-at-home order was relaxed again. While masks were still required, the amended order allowed businesses to increase occupancy if they were able to install physical barriers between customers. But by this point, the holiday surge was beginning, and this one was more devastating than the summer.
We really are in a difficult time right now in Alabama. This is a very challenging time, and we're looking at some pretty dark days for the foreseeable future.
The governor again extended the modified safer-at-home order in December and in January. In the middle of the holiday surge, which would ultimately spike with more than 3,000 hospitalizations statewide, some relief arrived. Pfizer vaccine doses arrived in Alabama on December 14th. The next day, doctors and nurses rolled up their sleeves to become the first to get it as the state launched its rollout. Fast forward to mid-March. The vaccine distribution is in full swing now, with mass vaccination clinics going on all across the state. Hospitals have resumed elective surgeries and students are back in school. The week of March 1st, Alabama administered its 1 millionth COVID-19 vaccine dose. And on March 4th, the governor extended the state's mask order for what she says will be the final time. On April 9th, the state's safer-at-home order will expire, paving the way for Alabama's move into the next phase of our return to normal.
Folks, we're not there yet, but goodness knows we're getting closer.
And now, 1 year later, and only right here on Way 31 News, a candid Governor Kay Ivey opening up about her tough decisions, mistakes, and even hope for Alabama.
Most of our vocabulary.
How could we forget 1 year ago and these 6 words?
These are uncertain times for sure.
Right after that speech, Governor Kay Ivey issued a restrictive stay-at-home order to try to reduce the spread of coronavirus. Governor Ivey believes she mostly made the right calls, mostly.
I think we've done amazingly well given the circumstances.
Yet she does have some regrets, like her decision to reluctantly shut down many businesses.
If you shut down a business, a lot of them are likely not to come back, and a lot of states did close down, and sure enough, they hadn't come back. So that was a mistake, and I won't ever do that again.
Frustrated after watching the state's economy take a downward slide, the governor loosened up the reins, allowing for a responsible reopening. But despite her personal feelings, she still imposed a mandatory mask mandate.
I much prefer personal responsibility than a government mandate any day.
That mask order led to growing chants against the governor of Big Brother, more specifically, Meemaw.
You have to do what's best for Alabamians and let the chips fall where they will, and if it makes them feel good to call me Governor Meemaw, so be it.
While she didn't personally lose anyone to the deadly disease, she feels deeply for those who did.
Just show sympathy and empathy with all our people who lost family and friends due to the COVID, and just pray it never comes back again.
To avoid that from happening, the governor wants more, as she calls it, vaccine shots in the arm.
We're doing real well with distributing what we have, but we just don't have enough yet. We just need more vaccine supply. We've learned a lot going along, but we're making progress, and we're still headed in the right direction, thank goodness.
Giving her administration a better than average grade.
So, all in all, I'd say we score about a B.
While acknowledging there's more room for improvement.
Not perfect, but we're certainly making progress.
Pat Simon, Way 31 News.
Alabama State Health Officer helped guide the governor's decision-making. I asked Dr. Scott Harris about the tough decisions that were made to protect the public health.
This is a very fast-moving situation. We're not surprised to have additional cases, and we have been expecting this for some time.
Do you remember where you were when you first learned of COVID-19?
Really, it was actually in February. I had traveled to Washington, D.C. for a meeting of other state health officers, and that's when we learned we had the first case in the United States. I have to say we all sort of felt at the same time like the world had changed, and not in a good way.
Not many Americans know what it was like to be on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic.
No one really saw up front the twists and turns that the pandemic was going to take.
Alabama State Health Officer Dr. Scott Harris spoke candidly with me during a socially distanced interview about what he's learned in the last year.
You know, it's really hard to describe. I think that a year's come and gone, and I really had very little time to try to sit back and get a perspective on it. It feels like every minute we're trying to put out a fire here or there, and there's just a lot of things still happening almost too fast for us to keep up.
Was there anything else that could even be remotely close to what we're dealing with?
Certainly, COVID-19 is unique, and it's unique in our lifetimes, I think. I don't think there are very few people living that have ever seen anything like this.
Early on, he said we knew the mitigation strategies that would help slow the spread, but it was like pulling teeth to get people to do them.
The safety and health of all Alabamians is paramount.
It's very challenging to order people to do things that they simply don't want to do. No one's going to be happy with all the decisions, and some people aren't happy with any decisions at all.
What's the biggest lesson you have learned as an individual moving forward through all of this?
I would certainly say that it's surprising that the facts don't always win the argument. You know, you would think that things like numbers are pretty straightforward and that they would be convincing to anyone when you're trying to describe a situation, and yet they're not. Our direction from the beginning is to use the best science we have available, make the best decisions we can to protect people's health and safety.
Where do you see us going from here as a state?
I'm optimistic. You know, we finally see the way that we can get out of this. We've always known the way to get out of this, but we now actually have all these tools in place that are going to get us there. You know, I don't want people to forget, we've lost 10,000 Alabamians to this disease, 10,000 of our friends and neighbors and loved ones. The mandate itself is going away on April 9th, but that doesn't change the medical advice, which is do what you need to do to be safe. Please hang in there a little bit longer. Please continue to do the things that keep yourself safe and keep your loved ones safe.
Alabama medical leaders battled on the front lines of this pandemic to keep you safe. Next, a look at the work still ahead as more people get vaccinated and what the coming months hold for us all.
State of emergency. 1 year of COVID-19 in Alabama.
North Alabama weathered this crisis thanks in large part to dedicated leaders in healthcare and government who worked tirelessly behind the scenes right from the start. Even before our first confirmed COVID-19 case, it was all hands on deck.
Really, we've worked almost every day, 7 days a week.
We weren't sure what to expect, so that probably first 2 months, we were talking on a daily basis and into Saturdays and Sundays also.
Two familiar faces to Way 31 viewers, Huntsville Mayor Tommy Battle and Huntsville Hospital infectious disease specialist Dr. Ali Hassoun. The mayor calls 2020 a fish he'd like to throw back. At the same time, he's incredibly proud of how his city reacted to and met the challenges of this past 12 months.
This is my COVID book.
Over the past year, Battle carried this well-worn notebook with him and filled it with plans, predicaments, suggestions and solutions. It's something he's done before.
And I've got a book on when we had the tornadoes come through, and when we had H1N1, I've got my notes from H1N1 times, because this helps us. I mean, it's history, and it gives us a history. When the next one comes along, we'll have something to look at.
Being prepared, having that playbook, is what is helping Battle and his team meet and beat this challenge. For Dr. Hassoun and his team, the virus itself was the problem. Symptoms, diagnosis, treatments were all changing on an almost daily basis, but they learned and adjusted as they went. Hassoun credits this community and science for pulling us through. Even so, he's worried about the next time.
But I think we're going to need better way for public health to be supported, to have better structure, as well as to be better funded, so we can deal with this much, much better.
The mayor is proud of this community and how we survived, even thrived, lifting each other up through some of the worst times in memory.
Everybody pulled together, and that was the magic of it.
Looking ahead, Battle is confident by summer we'll be looking at COVID through our rearview mirror. And then, look out.
We all better be ready for a great second half of this year, because I think people are going to be ready to get out.
Years ago, the mayor spearheaded an effort to install high-speed fiber optic internet all around the city. He says that allowed high-tech employees to continue to work from home and help keep our economy going through the pandemic.
Hospitals across North Alabama treated hundreds of patients over the past year. None had more patients than North Alabama's biggest hospital system. I spoke with CEO David Spillers about the challenges hospital staff faced. He reflected on where things started and where we are in the fight against the virus today.
It was pretty simple.
Huntsville Hospital CEO David Spillers told me the coronavirus pandemic is unlike anything hospital staff could have anticipated.
Early in the pandemic, it appeared that there were going to be huge numbers of people that needed critical care beds and respirators and those types of things. And some people were predicting we were going to have to put up field hospitals and we're going to run out of beds. If you remember, early in this process, a lot of our effort was put into getting people in and getting them tested. Opened up the flu and fever clinic, ran testing sites all over the community.
Spillers told me hospital leadership worked to make sure that staff had the personal protective equipment they needed to do the job safely. This at a time when there was a nationwide shortage of masks and gloves. Then a major setback. Coronavirus cases spiked after the holiday season.
I think the longer we were in the pandemic, the more comfortable people felt being around family members, even though there was no reason to treat a family member any different than anyone else.
Spillers told me COVID cases peaked around Christmas through January. It hit the hospital staff hard.
At one time, we had between 350 and 400 people that worked for us out with COVID or a family member with COVID. So all of a sudden you're asking those people who are here to pick up extra shifts and do some things they maybe had not done before. We had to reconfigure a lot of our floors in the hospital so that we could accommodate a very large number of COVID patients. The trickle-down impact was pretty significant throughout our community.
And then, in the darkest of times, hope.
I think we were all excited when the Pfizer vaccine was finally approved and available to us, along with the Moderna vaccine. I think one of the reasons that hospitalizations have come down substantially is that we've been able to get vaccines to the people who are most likely to end up in a hospital.
Everyone's life was touched by this virus in some way. For almost all of us, it will never be quite the same.
Our goal tonight was to show you that among the devastating loss of the virus, people in our community came together to find innovative ways to battle this pandemic and save lives.
But the fight continues.
After this break, the president will do what we've done here, reflecting on 1 year of COVID-19 in the U.S.
Thank you for watching this special presentation of Way 31 News. For more than 60 years, North Alabama has turned to Way 31 for trusted news, weather, and information. Coverage you can count on air, online, on your phone. Way 31.